It's the Lockdown Flyers podcast for Thursday, December 19th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that loves it when Torts gets riled up on the bench, but not so much when they end up losing the game.
Yeah, it was fun.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here, as always, with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can keep the season going with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com to get started. And to find our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can follow us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky, and of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ's prospect expertise will come into play when we discuss a trade that went down in junior hockey that has an effect on some Flyers prospects. Plus, we're going to preview tonight's matchup against the LA Kings. But first, of course, we have to talk about the Flyers' loss to the Red Wings in Detroit. This was an absolutely bizarro game.
Yeah, it was a game that featured no goaltending and no defense. I think that's fair to say for both teams. Was it odd that Patrick Kane got the game winner when he couldn't put a puck in the ocean for like the longest time? No, because I think people would expect that. I don't even know what to say. I do have a stat, so I'll say that. I'm not trying to rhyme. Trust me. It just happened. Sam Ersson. I've talked about him being able to have to stop some one-on-one shots, right? So I looked on Instat. His breakaway percentage is 33%, not counting tonight. I always feel like it's a 50-50 proposition when a goalie and a shooter are, it's just them, mano a mano. You got to be at least 50% in my eyes, or 40-something, high 40s. 33 is not going to cut it, and it didn't cut it tonight.
Right. And you look at, I understand like stopping a goal on a 2-on-0 is very hard.
Yeah, that's hard.
But the Kane goal,
I think why did he go down?
Yeah.
He got aggressive and he went down. He gave him so much to shoot at. I didn't understand that. But I will say this on the 2-on-0. The only thing a goaltender can do is read what the defenseman's going to do. And so he saw that the defenseman was going to try and block the pass. So he knew that the defenseman was going to still try and he knew the other player, rather, who was a Christian Fischer, was going to make the pass, most likely. But he still stayed with the shooter. And when the pass was made, he just couldn't get over. And I feel like he should have at least played it halfway.
Right. To try and just cut off a little bit more of the angle there and block more of the net. Yeah. I think, I agree with you 100% there. And I do think like
those goals were important.
They were absolutely important, especially after the Flyers worked so hard to get back into it.
They tied up the game, which was, going into the third period down 2 goals, and they tied it up quick. But the beginning of the game was bizarre. It was like goal. Oh yeah, goal, goal, goal. Like, what's going on here? Like, there was only there wasn't a ton of shots.
No. That's the thing. It was like a relatively low event game as games go. I mean,
right.
24-19. That's a pretty low shot total.
In this era? Yeah, it's really low.
Yeah, overall. And the Flyers power play /6-on-5 here also was not great. Understand they only got 1 power play, but then they had some extended time 6-on-5. I really think their puck control on that 6-on-5 was dreadful.
It was abysmal. Yeah, it was brutal. Just brutal. Again, practice it. I mean, move around some of the parts, do something. There's a guy, Emil Andre. He's pretty good at this stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, I just I think that that is definitely something that stood out in this game. We do have to talk about the non-calls
Yeah.
that Tortorella was
Wait,
mad about with the arm going up or not going up, and
it did go up
uh,
a little. It was kind of like
it did.
it kind of
No,
was
it
like
went up
when
completely. It just went up for a very, very brief second.
yeah, it's kind of like when your teacher says, "If you hate chocolate, raise your hand." You're like, "Wait, no, 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 it's not. I do like chocolate." You know, and it's like you're a referee. You've got to be decisive. What the hell are you doing?
Right, and that's the call I think they actually should have made, right?
Right,
And that I think, they just threw Tortorella a bone and didn't call the too much man penalty
right,
because, what are they gonna
right.
do?
Right,
Very
because
clear
one
the
thing
official
started the
messed
other, the
up.
chain reaction, that's fine. And then there was the bogus makeup call. Like that
Right.
wasn't a
Right.
penalty. Like it wasn't. With
I could see
Paling,
why
it
they
wasn't.
thought it was initially or thought
Yeah,
they could get away with it as a makeup call.
right.
I I think,
But it's like
it
we
got
all know, the
sold,
whole
but
world knows. Anybody who's watched hockey for any amount of time knows that that was a makeup call, and I just hate them. I do.
yeah. Well, the Flyers
It
didn't
didn't
score
matter.
on the power
No,
play anyway.
it's a moot
It was
point, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not a good power play. Trying to find some bright spots
Well, I
here.
mean, Noah Cates was a bright spot.
Yeah, I would say Noah Cates and Jamie Drysdale, once
Yeah,
again, both had pretty solid games. I think Jamie Drysdale's, activation offensively was really good
it was,
in
but
this
it's just
game.
it's not adding up. But it
Right.
was good, but it's not adding up. Like,
Yeah.
when's it gonna add up on the score sheet, you know?
One of the things we talked about on yesterday's show was how the Flyers were gonna get scoring, and, they did get 4 goals in this game,
They did.
two of which came from depth forwards. So that was good, and that's something we talked about. We talked about Noah Cates, getting on the board a little bit more, and he did. We talked about Ryan Paling specifically getting on the board,
We did.
as somebody on the fourth line that has had some pressure but isn't converting very much. He did get on the board, in this game as well. So that is something promising, I think. It's something to build on for that fourth line for sure. Now, I
I
know
gotta
they
ask
did
a
switch
question.
things up a little bit and put
Yeah.
Couturier on that line and shuffled everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Couturier didn't have a good game.
No.
Tippett had a nice goal too, but they have to stop with these breakaways. I don't know who's telling them that not breakaways, wraparounds, sorry. They have to stop with that. I don't know who's telling them they think they could score on these wraparounds, but that one really led to a goal too. And
Yeah.
like they're just goalies are they're hardwired now for wraparounds. 10 years ago, yes, it was a thing that goalies didn't get used to. But once goalies started once every goalie was a butterfly and started all being the same, they all were able the leg extension now of goalies is so much better than it used to be. So it's really hard to convert on that. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, I think, there's a time and a place for it, but I think when there's a lot of traffic in front of the net and the puck can bounce anywhere on the
Right.
attempt, that's where you get into trouble like they
Right.
did. And, if you're on a breakaway and you wrap around the net and people haven't had the time to get back, sure, give
Right.
it a
That
shot.
makes sense because it's just you and the goalie and maybe somebody else. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the other obvious issue in this game was the lack of shots on goal. We talked about it being a low event game, but
Right.
in terms of, how the Flyers saw the game develop, we saw from jump that the goaltending wasn't good. So the solution is clearly get more shots on goal because something will go eventually. And
Yeah.
it did, but I feel like even scoring 4 goals, which I know is a lot, especially for the Flyers,
Mhm.
I feel like they coulda had more if they had gotten more attempts off that were, on target.
There's no reason not to think that. I mean, I can't argue with that based on what went in. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's sensible. I think that
Yeah.
makes sense. I will tell you there was a strategy too. And this tells you that teams look at tendencies, look at video. The video guy sends it to the team, sends it to the coach, sends it to certain players if there's certain things to look for. And they
Well, the
knew
video guy got a shout out during the broadcast even in this game.
I was watching a different oh, actually, I was watching it, but at times I had to have the sound off, so I missed the video game shout out. Video guy shout out. But I'll say this: when you see that there's like 3:20 and the Flyers are talking on the bench, the Red Wings all of a sudden decided we're going to play keep away and we're going to have hold on to the puck and we're going to make sure they can't pull their goalie with 3 minutes left. So they have all this extra time to try and get the extra man on the ice. They defended against that with offense, with puck
Yeah,
possession.
they
And they
did.
got and they took a minute and change off. What I think when the Flyers finally pulled Ersson, it was under 2 minutes, right? But
Yeah, I think so.
in this game,
Normally, it
Torts
would have
would have
been 3.5.
correct. And they knew that. They absolutely knew that.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting to have seen that approach and strategy. And yeah, and Ursan had trouble
Yep.
figuring out if he could actually exit the ice,
Well, I
and
mean, that was
had to go
funny.
back a
Like
couple of times.
when when the broadcast team was talking about that, and Eddie was talking about that, he didn't even know the answer, and Boucher was like, "Yeah, it's weird," and he admitted, like, so there are things you could play the game for your whole life, like Brian Boucher and Eddie Olczyk, one is a goalie, one not, and still not know why something is. But that was the case tonight.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, we'll see what they can do against the LA Kings, and we are going to preview that game, the second half of a back-to-back, coming up next. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. Prize Picks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game.
The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They could find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and then to be in the healthiest, best version of you. Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. If you're in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required. These policies are more affordable than you think. You can get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 a month. So head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life insurance and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today, NHL today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Select Quote. They shop, you save.
All right, on tomorrow's show, we of course will be recapping the game against the LA Kings that we are about to preview, and we will look ahead to the weekend matchups against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Again, it's repeat week, so that's what we're getting into
Yep.
here. But this is going to be the first of 2 matchups against the LA Kings this season. Right now, Kings are on a roll, I would say. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10 and in second place in the Pacific Division. I think, the most interesting thing about their run is that they still have not won an overtime game this season. They're 0-4, and they just lost to the Pens in overtime on Tuesday, 3-2. So that was their 4th overtime loss of the season. I feel like that's like a small window into maybe how the Flyers can end up winning one here. But I think the other interesting thing is that the Kings, like, they tend to really dominate other teams in their wins. And when they lose, it's an extremely close battle that they either come out with a point in overtime loss or they're just barely losing. Like they're not losing badly at all this season.
No, no, and I don't know. I just don't know what to make of them. But like you said, they're on their hot streak right now, so it's kind of like it's hard to gauge that and then look at their goaltending and say it's going to hold up for the year because I don't think
Right.
it will. But it's holding up right now, and so right now is all you really care about as far as the Flyers facing them. So what's good about the Kings? Well, they're strong down the middle. We see what Quentin
Mhm.
Byfield can do. Kopitar is still great. Even if Byfield's on the wing and playing with Kopitar, whatever they decide, whichever configuration, it's big bodies and it's hard. And so down the middle, they're strong. We talked about Alex Turcotte. We talked about some of that already. So they're missing Drew Doughty. That's a big deal,
Yeah.
obviously. But they still have a good enough defense. Not what it used to be. It's not, but it's still good. They
Yeah.
they
Well,
have a pretty good team. Adrian Kempe, who in his draft year used to call himself a warrior, and I trumpeted that because I was like, I like this guy. He's really blossomed too.
yeah, I want to talk about this Kings defense
Okay.
because one of the things that stands out about the Kings is that they have the lowest shots per game against in the NHL at 24.7. That is
Yeah.
really good. And if you look at that Pens game that they just lost again in overtime, so it was a very narrow margin of victory here. Darcy Kemper, who played in that game, faced 31 shots, which is much higher than the typical shots
And
faced
maybe that's why they
by.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Because I
that's
don't
where
think
your point about
their
gold.
goaltending
Right.
stellar. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where your point about goaltending comes into play here, is that the Kings defense is doing such a good job at shot suppression that the goaltenders haven't had to pick up the slack, but when they do, that's where your opening lies, right? And that's what the Flyers are gonna have to do, is just take a ton of shots and hope that more of them go through.
I mean, we talked about shooting last episode. Like, keep shooting. Like that's going to be the big thing here because the more rubber that these goalies have to face, it's clearly an issue because they're not used to doing it. It's a great point.
Right, and then I think the other thing you talked about, Turcotte, who we mentioned specifically as an option if we were looking to make a trade with the Kings,
Which could be
and
happening. Like there's so much smoke there. I don't know what's
yeah,
going to happen when I step in that press box.
right. So, we'll see if anything comes to fruition in terms of these trade rumors. We're the ones that want Turcotte. We don't even know
Right.
if he's
We have no
in the
idea what's
if
no,
he's in the conversation,
no.
right? But interestingly, yeah, this is where I think maybe he wouldn't be in the conversation, only because so Trevor Moore was injured and was out the last couple of games, and they moved Turcotte up to that top line. He scored in the game against the Pens, even though they lost. And so to me, he's like a very valuable asset to the Kings that they
Yeah.
generally don't move him up the lineup, but they
Right.
can. He's
Right.
just one of those guys.
Yeah, he can
And
play
so I
center
feel
or
like,
wing. So yeah.
yeah, and so that's where I feel like maybe he wouldn't be in the conversation there, but also it's gonna make it harder to play against the Kings. I still don't know if Moore is gonna be back in the lineup yet or not, for the Kings. He was day to day last I checked. But yeah, that is a very interesting aspect of all these trade rumors, right?
It is an interesting aspect for sure. Like that's something where yeah, I wasn't even, taking that into account, but I'm, obviously not shocked that Turcotte's picking it up because we identified that. But yeah, this is not an easy game. Alex Laferriere is somebody who I've talked about previously on this show. I've written about him on sportsology.com because he was a guy that came out of Harvard, I think it was, and I watched him there. And he's a good player. He's their third leading scorer now. Like that's a big deal. And like I said, Kempe Fiala is always dangerous. Brant Clark,
Right.
Brant Clark is a problem. Brant Clark not only could have great breakouts and tremendous passes, but he's got a computer in his brain as far as for offense. He's okay defensively. He's not great, but that'll get better. But he's doing better than I thought he would defensively, but offensively, he's doing exactly what I thought 17 points, 31 games, because he's only 21 years old and they waited on him. They probably wanted to bring him up last year, to be honest. But Brant Clark is a smart one. I've chatted with him many times. He gets the game. You've got to have a game plan for him. Whoever's out on the ice, then you've got to really watch out and clog the lanes and look out for some of his passes because they could be elite.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think that, you look at the goaltending stats and both of their top, their goaltenders have an under 3 goals against average, which isn't like the best in the world. They're at 2.49 for Riddick and Darcy Kemper's at 2.32, but it's been enough. Kemper is above 900. Riddick is just below 900. But when you have like that defense, to your point, in front of them, it doesn't matter as much. Edmondson is still really good.
He's really
Gavrikov,
big and slow though, and so is Gavrikov. Like they're both
right? But
strong.
he's right. But they're both good complements to their
They
defensive
are,
partners.
but I'm getting that they're bigger, slower guys because the Flyers have to sort of match up speed against those guys. They have the home
Mhm.
ice, so they have the change, and you got to match up speed. But you also, the way you could wreak havoc on this is going to go completely against the way the Flyers do everything, and that is basically when Frost has the puck, let him go all the way up the ice. When Mitchkov has the
Yep.
puck, let him go all the way up the ice. Because then, if you're a slower footed defenseman and they happen to be on the ice when those guys are, they have to react to that guy breaking into the offensive zone. If they just slingshot it back or, wait behind the net and pass it to the other guy and then pass it to the other guy, it's easier to set up for. I think you got to do better than that against this team right now, the way
Yeah,
they're
I
playing.
think so. I think so too. And I think that, the Flyers are going to have to take advantage of rush opportunities when
Yeah.
they can
Yep.
and use what speed they have. And I think, again, we have talked about getting Emil Andre back up into the lineup
I mean,
against
this
the
would be
Kings is
ideal for it. But they're gonna
yes.
think the other way. They're gonna be like, "Oh, look at all those big players they have." They got Byfield, they got Kopitar. We just named 2 big defensemen.
Yep.
They're not gonna talk about Fiala, who's small and fast. They're gonna talk about all the big guys, and it's like, okay, so you're gonna hurt on the second power play, and Zamula's gonna make a mistake, and everybody's gonna complain about it. That's what's gonna happen. Okay,
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely a calculated risk, but I do think it's kind of one that you have to take here,
I think so.
especially because, the Kings penalty kill is not good. That's like another weakness of theirs. And so to have somebody like Andre available for the power play for the Flyers, I think is really useful. I mean,
It's
it's
almost guaranteed he's getting scratched though, because I think he was skating alone
right.
in
Right,
practice.
and,
So
like, the Kings' power play isn't that great either. So I do think
to
this
be
is a
fair, the
situation.
Flyers' penalty kill has not been great in weeks.
Well, totally,
Yeah.
totally.
So it
I
might
just
be
think
it might all come out in the wash.
true, true. So I think that this is, again, just a good opportunity to put Emil Andre back in the lineup
I
and
agree. I
see
hope
what
that happens,
happens.
but this doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, well, we shall see. In the meantime, we have a trade at the junior level to
Oh, okay. It's not
discuss.
with the Kings. All right. I get it.
It is not with the Kings, although the Kings are somewhat involved peripherally in
Trade
this
talk.
discussion in their prospect pool. But there's a trade that will affect Flyers prospects in multiple ways, and we are going to talk about that coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I would still take the Rams over the Jets on the money line. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so we teased this junior level hockey trade,
We did.
and what happened is that the London Knights, of course, home of our guys, Oliver Bonk and Denver Barkey, right? They are all in again this year, given
Yep.
their success, right? And so they traded with the Guelph Storm, home of Jett Luchanko, and are receiving or have received Cam Allen, who is a very strong defensive prospect in the Washington Capitals system, right?
Yep.
And they traded away a player and a whole bucket of, I think it's like 7 or 8 picks. So it's a
Yeah, they
big
have
deal
crazy
trade.
trades in junior hockey. They do. They
Right.
imagine if they did that in the NHL with like 7 picks. No
Oh
way.
my goodness. No, no. But so this is a big deal for the London Knights to, going into mid-season to get a prospect of Cam Allen's stature in their system to shore up their defense moving forward as they work to get toward another Memorial Cup this season. And so I think, when you see a trade like that come through, the first thought that we had relative to it is that what does this do to Jett Luchanko's development when you take away their team's ostensibly best defenseman?
Yeah. So back in 2023, um, when I spoke to Cam Allen at the combine, the Flyers spoke to him. I'm only saying that because there was this paradox that I think went on because the Flyers took Carter Sutherland exactly before Cam Allen. So the only thing I'm saying is I'm not saying I would take Allen over Sutherland, although I might, but I like both. But we know Sutherland is having some medical issues, so we have to see how that works out for him. And we didn't know that then, so that stays out of it. But the point is, if I'm the Flyers, based on now having played with Luchanko, going to play with 2 more, your potential good prospects here that can make it. If there's a way to ever acquire him in a trade, I know it's with the Capitals, I do it. But anyhow, Allen reminds me of like a Ryan McDonough light. Like he's what his strength is. He's got long arms and he can play good defense. He skates well. He can be physical. He told me he likes to be physical. He was the top scoring defenseman, top scorer period on Guelph. Now, is he going to be that like down the line? No. But on London, he's going to play a different role, right? Because probably Oliver Bonk will stay where he is, and he has some more points than Oliver Bonk. But now, if Bonk gets the lion's share of everything, his point totals may drop, but he's going to still give them added depth and all those other things I talked about. Now, what does that do to Jett Luchanko? Oy.
Right. And that's the big question because if he doesn't have as much defensive support from a stronger defenseman on that team, the next question is, well, should we be trying to get Jett Luchanko off Guelph as well and have him traded to a contending team in the OHL?
I mean, I'm sure Danny Briere will call there and ask what they're up to. Another thing I had forgotten about, Allen had gone through shoulder surgery in 2023. So that was another thing where, he's definitely way over that. So this is a good player to play probably on the next pairing from Bonk, but also probably interact with Barkey at times. And so, this is a guy who definitely will help them on that side. With Luchanko, I think Briere will call them and say, you don't have much left here. What's the plan? And, might say, I wouldn't mind seeing him somewhere else. You can't force a team to do anything, but you could casually say what you would like for your prospect and hope that they do it. And I think they're probably there because we all felt like that was maybe going to have to be the case anyhow. So I think for Luchanko's development, I think he does need to go to a more high-powered team with better talent to have better talent around him so he can get more points, more confidence, especially at the Flyers. And I'm going to use the word rush him into action next year. So if you're going to do that, then he needs to play on a better team and play with higher caliber talent. He does.
Right. And so that's where I think it gets a little dicey. So we want to make sure that Jett Luchanko is supported in his development, specifically because, he did spend time with the Flyers this year. He went back to junior for very good reason. But if he's not getting the development support he needs, we got to get him in a better situation until he's actually ready to come to the Flyers. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
And then on the London side of things, we just want to make sure that Oliver Bonk doesn't get significant ice time taken away from him because of the inclusion of Allen.
Of Allen, yes. Yeah.
So I think, again, this is like what seems like far away from Flyers land as a small
It's not that
trade.
far away,
It's
though.
it's not that far away, right? And so, I think that it's a really interesting situation for the Flyers prospect development, and it's something that, that's why we pay attention to these things and look at these deals and, what effect they could have on
It is like
Flyers
a jigsaw
prospects.
puzzle. It is. And another point that you had brought up off air, which we'll bring up now on air, is um, if London goes to the Memorial Cup, that means Oliver Bonk will not play with the Phantoms on like an ATO or something this year. Not going to happen because it's gonna most likely be too late because the Phantoms may not make the playoffs, or if not, they probably won't be in it at that time. It's possible they could be. You could hold out hope. I just don't know if that's going to align or not. So chances are it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
that affects things too. And it's a good thing for him to go to a Mem Cup and possibly win. Don't get me wrong. I mean, for all I know, I'll go. I mean, I've been to 3 or 4 Mem Cups, so it's, doesn't take much to get me to go.
Yeah, yep, we shall see for sure. But, in the meantime, we're keeping an eye on all of the Flyers prospects and we'll continue to report on them as information becomes available. If you have any Flyers prospects you want us to check in on, we're happy to do that. And you can let us know through any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology. Same on the socials. SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.